Some of the most important characteristics of a good leader, well, I think clearly authenticity. And I think there are two elements to that. One is knowing yourself, and the other is being yourself and being confident in who you are as a person. I think an attitude to learning is important, constantly learning and growing, which brings with it a natural humility, because you can't know everything, and knowing that you need to continue to develop to be a better leader. Mistakes come from, often your strengths become your weaknesses after a period of time. So not adapting and not learning and not being open to change can often be a problem for everyone, but for leaders as well. I mean, I think you see good leaders have some consistent characteristics. I mean, I think they communicate a very clear understanding of what we're trying to achieve together. Whether you call that a vision or a mission or just priorities or goals, there's always a clarity about what the organisation or what the team is trying to achieve. So I think that's very consistent, and I've certainly seen that. But communication more generally as well, continuous communication. I mean, every leadership role I've ever had where there's been an assessment of how you could improve or what people were looking for more from the leader, communication's been very high on the list. People want to hear from the leader, want to hear what's going on, and want to hear what his priorities are or her priorities are, and how that chimes with the organisation. I sort of have never grown up with this sort of notion that's become more popular these days, that leaders should be vulnerable. I just think they should be authentic. You should be who you are. If you're a real person, and sometimes people clearly have failings or at least limitations, and are only too happy to admit that, look, I'm not sure what to do here. And then they get the team around them and people share their ideas and thoughts, and you collectively come to the right conclusion. So, but I think being open and being someone who's prepared to listen is really important. On the other hand, it's actually really important that the leader, when there are difficulties or decisions have to be taken, that they are prepared to be decisive. There are circumstances where leaders have to be directive and decisive and get things done, and not listen too much and not consider lots of options. They actually have to make a decision and move on. When times are tough, it's really the uncertainty that they're not quite sure how the organisation is going to react or how the team is going to perform, or just again back to clarity of direction, just exactly what they should be doing in these difficult circumstances. So communication's even more important in difficult circumstances. Well, mostly I think I've felt pretty good about the decisions I've taken, whether it's been in the sports environment or a business environment or an arts environment. Mostly because you do the work beforehand, and I think that's another crucial requirement, is to work with other members of the team and to do the work, to really do the analysis. And so one of the things I've certainly learned in business over the years is you've really got to do the work to be confident of your decision making. But once you've done the work, there often is a bit of a gap, a sort of a gut feel or an intuition gap, and you've got to go with it, and you've got to be courageous, and you've got to go. Because as we used to say in rugby, the wrong move done with 100% conviction and commitment is better than the right move done with doubt. Yeah, the leadership sort of characteristics of successful leaders are consistent across all applications of the leadership, and that's simply because you're always leading people. You're not really leading businesses or sort of entities like teams. You're actually leading individual people and people as a collective. And if people understand that, they'll understand that it's leadership is not primarily an analytical or intellectual challenge. It's an emotional and even spiritual challenge to engage people and ensure that they share the purpose of the organisation. But there are differences too, and there are differences because what people are trying to achieve is different in different circumstances. In the business circumstances, what you're mostly trying to achieve, in the short term at least, is our quantitative goals. So you hit your earnings target for the month and the half and the year. Make the profit, get your bonus, whatever the target might be that motivates people. Even in sport, it's very concrete. You have to win this match. But what I've found is, just to finish on that, I also found that in arts, of course, for instance, is a bit different. There's nothing as quantitative about if you're trying to perform a great play, or you're trying to a company's trying to perform a dance. Then how do you say that you had a great night or not? I mean, the players and the dancers can feel it; they know it, but it's hard to actually quantify that. So you have to be aware of that. That there are a lot of goals for some people are not quantifiable. But what I've found fundamentally, though, actually underneath all of that, that what people across business, sport, arts, whatever it may be, not-for-profit environment, what they're really after is excellence or mastery, a sense that they're achieving things at a high level, and they are both personally and within their group, able to do things as well as they possibly can. Most leaders that derail because of ego. Right. And that ego that over-emphasis on their own ego manifests itself in lots of different ways. Probably most often in just not listening well enough and not considering carefully enough other people's opinions. Just being too quick to make decisions on your own experience and your own sort of gut feel or view, just because you think you know better than other people. So I think that's probably the most common way in which ego gets in the way. Psychologically speaking, very often when people aren't prepared to listen to other people, it's not so much that they've got such an ego, it's such that they are actually really uncertain, and they don't actually know, and they want to cover up the fact that they don't know by just making quick decisions and not having to dwell on the problem and have other people present other arguments that they have to go back on their previous view or whatever it might be. So it's actually a sign of weakness when people feel they're unable to take other people's advice into account. You're not a better leader or a stronger leader because you don't listen to other people. You're a weaker leader. World-class teams or great teams, you've got a few consistent things. You've definitely got a vision or clarity about what we're trying to achieve here together. You've definitely got talent. There's no question that selecting the best team around you, whether it's in sports or it's in business, is definitely going to deliver the best outcomes. And the reality is, in some cases, if you don't have the best talents, you won't win. You won't be the best team. So that's a tough thing for leaders to grapple with. But they do have to make changes to teams if teams aren't good enough. I think that's good old-fashioned discipline and hard work. No teams ever get to the top without discipline and hard work and doing the grind that's necessary to make it. And I think that constant learning and development and innovation is absolutely crucial. And being prepared to think differently and think new things and do things differently, which is really just a learning and development mindset within the team. I suppose finally, dealing with interpersonal politics. You get that in all sorts of teams, and certainly you got it in the sports teams I played with, and you see it in the arts probably even more than anywhere. People have got strong personalities, they've got views about things. So you have to have methods for dealing with and surfacing problems between people and resolving them completely in the context of the team goal. We're here to achieve, we're not here to achieve your goal or your goal, we're here to achieve team goal, and you guys need to learn to work together to do that. Right away from that is important. So modelling an environment that you think is important, communicating effectively that we don't do politics around here, we don't do interpersonal backstabbing and problems. You need to, if you've got a problem with someone, talk to them up front, deal with things, make that part of the culture, an explicit part of the values and culture of the organisation. And then when that's not being adhered to, as it won't be from time to time, don't be weak. Don't think, it'll go away, it'll get better. You actually have to be strong and you have to address it. And addressing it really is about, I would say, you've got to be, you can't just get people in a room and say, well, sort out your problems. I'll probably just bitch at each other for a while and then move on. You've got to try and facilitate it. There's people in business are used to mediation and facilitation and things. You've got to listen to both sides of the party. You've got to try and help them share each other's view. And then a decision has to be taken, you have to move on. There are more satisfying work careers available now to younger people than there were, generally speaking, in our day. But it does require people to realise that they have to take responsibility for their careers and they have to learn and develop. And what we're seeing more and more of is quite short tenures early on in people's careers while they develop some of the broad-ranging skills that are necessary to then apply in particular areas. And I think that's a good thing. But people, as I say, have to take responsibility. That said, they should expect plenty of learning on the job. In other words, they should expect to be put into places where they have other people around them who are experienced and capable, and they can learn from them, but they're learning in the context of doing. They're actually part of the team that's doing something. They have a role to play. They're able to do that. They're probably struggling a bit, paddling fast underwater, but getting it done. But then they're seeing other people and other things that are being achieved, and they're learning and engaging as they go along. Yeah, I think it's important to see coaching and mentoring as a two-way thing as well, and less formal than it's often considered to be. In other words, if you're working with someone and you have a meeting and it goes particularly well, or they're talking about a particular structuring of something, or some particular business problem is being talked about and you don't really quite understand it, ask the question at the end of it. I wasn't really quite sure what you were referring to then and how we were going to solve that problem. And then you have this on-the-job immediate learning from a peer or someone who's a bit older and more experienced than you, and that's the sort of learning that really sticks. I think the working environment leaders, older leaders, people like me, need to clearly get their head around, and I do, is that even though you think you're the most important people because you're the most experienced and you're most senior and you've got the the whatever the right titles are that makes you the most senior person in the organisation, you are not leading the culture or the evolution of the business. The business is evolving in terms of its work practices and the way it works according to the needs of the younger people, because they will do what they want to do. And they will go where they want to go, and they'll work for the organisations that they want to work for. So you've got to be very open to understanding that the evolution is happening, but it's being driven from the bottom up. And also breadth. People don't want to come in and do one job. They want to come in and get experience across a range of different things, and they want to learn and they want to develop in those things. So having an environment which allows that and allows that earlier. All of that said, and all of that invested, you're still probably going to lose younger people earlier than you think you would. And so you just have to embrace that as well. You can't grumble about it and say, it's not probably put all this learning into someone, they've gone away. Well, guess what? You need to hire someone who comes from somewhere else, and they've got a lot of learning too. And so what goes around comes around, and you just have to remain positive and create an environment where people can be have purpose. Be ambitious, be clear about wanting to do something, be prepared to work hard. Understand it'll be ambition and hard work just go together. There's just no such thing as sensible ambition without commitment to hard work to get there. Learning, just be constantly open and prepared to learn. Understand it's always going to happen through teams, not you personally. I mean, I think one of the leadership styles that's changed in me over time has been I was very ambitious and sort of focused on success as much for myself as for the team, thinking that if I'm successful then that'll make the team successful as well. But I've become more inclined to a more less personally ambitious than I would have been when I was younger. I mean, it's a trade-off. You do have to be ambitious and driven to succeed, but you also have to take team members with you. I don't buy the superstar leader in just about any circumstance. I just don't think it exists. I mean, people create themselves as a persona. That's just a persona, though. It's just a created thing that their own fragile ego, which they're trying to cover up by making it themselves look very important, is what they project to the company. But it doesn't actually exist in terms of successful organisations. Superstar leaders do not exist. Yeah, well, I think it comes back to the first point, and the point we've talked about just about anywhere. This is absolutely magnified in politics, and that's authenticity. And if people are sort of trying to be the Prime Minister, and they always wanted to be the Prime Minister, now the Prime Minister, so they can act like the Prime Minister, that people see through that very quickly. And we've had some Prime Ministers in Australia in the last 6 or 7 or whatever it's been, that have fallen into that. They haven't been comfortable in their own skin, and that's come through clearly. So being authentic, being comfortable with who you are as a person, and just leading from your own base of values and family and just who you are, I think is absolutely crucial for political leaders. I think it's also really important that they're smart.
Yeah.
You've got to be thoughtful. There are a lot of problems thrown at them, so being able to solve problems and communicate, humbly, not grandiosely or grandiloquently, that about what the solution to the problems are, I think is also very important. People connect with those sort of solutions, but you've got to be smart, I think, to lead effectively, because you have to solve problems. I think the things that you're most proud of when you exercise leadership, because it's personal leadership as well often, are the things that are to do with, the difficult things, often to do with values. And for me, not touring with the All Blacks in 1986 to South Africa when the Rebel Cavaliers team went, I was one of only 2 players that said they wouldn't tour, was really difficult, because I felt a real loyalty and obligation to support the team. I haven't been in the All Blacks for 3 or 4 years at that time, but at the same time, a loyalty to my own views about what was the right thing to do. So the fact that I made that hard decision, and there was some difficulty afterwards with it, with other players and so on, but nevertheless look back on that and increasingly feel I made the right decision, and as a young person I was prepared to stand up for something I thought was more important than loyalty and appropriate followership. So that was really important for me. Obviously it was extremely satisfying to be part of the World Cup winning team in 1987, and that was after a lot of disharmony in the team. So that was a very harmonious team, came together, played great rugby throughout the tournament, just got better and better, and it was just a joy to play that type of rugby, and then of course to win the World Cup and have it plonked into my hands and then hold it up. That was a very joyful moment, obviously, which was the sort of the pinnacle of leadership. I think a lot of other leadership, more as I get older, I think that some of the more satisfying leadership is when it's not you personally seen as the leader almost, it's actually creating an environment where you see other people grow. So your leadership is to create the environment for people and to see them thrive in that environment. And I think I've seen it here at this business, which is the first business that I've founded, and now having been here for 7 years and had some of the younger people working here for 4 or 5 years, you can see how they've grown in their roles. And some of the times it's been just like throwing them in, walking away and saying, okay, you need to do this, and you can tell that they're nervous and concerned that they won't succeed, but then when they do grow through that, it's very satisfying as a leader. But also be joyful. I mean, it seems strange to talk about the joy of work, but people ought to come along and feel joyful and that they're getting something out of what they're doing. And that comes in 2 ways. It comes partly in interpersonal relations. No one wants to come to work with workmates that grumble all the time and a glass half full all the time and all the rest of it. But secondly, it's because people are doing really meaningful work and they feel like this is cool. I'm getting this done. I'm making a difference. I'm improving my own capability. I'm enjoying it.